I'm Overlord Risa, I know hockey, and I could make any team a contender. I will be an NHL general manager eventually, but for now, I'm going to play one on YouTube. Today, we're going to be taking a look at King Louie and the Desert Dogs, the Arizona Coyotes. Now, obviously, I can't fix their ownership issues and their seeming inability to pay their players, or their arena, or possibly even me in the hypothetical scenario I'm proposing, but what I can do is complete the rebuild and turn the team towards contention. So with that said, the first thing I would do when hired is look at all the expiring contracts and see who would be able to go for picks, even if it requires retaining a bit of salary, which they can do on one more contract. Any negative value assets we hold on to. There's no reason to trade away a Ladd or an Eriksson when their contracts expire before we turn the corner. Someone that would definitely be monetizable, however, is Shane Gostisbehere. Nice bit of business taking him on when his value was low and adding a second round pick for the pleasure. He's shown in Arizona what made him a great offensive defenseman in this league a few short seasons ago, and it's great to see. A team with a need for a puck-moving left-hand defenseman would certainly be looking to pick him up, possibly the New York Islanders, considering they likely still see themselves as contenders, at least for the near future, despite their rough start to the season, but more likely the Washington Capitals. They need to reload a bit to keep pushing for the playoffs with Ovechkin in tow, and Gostisbehere would be a fantastic second pair power play 2 defenseman to keep offensive pressure on when John Carlson is on the bench, or possibly if he gets hurt. Contracts of Matt Irwin and Justin Schultz expire this offseason. Nick Jensen would be a great partner that can cover his weaknesses. It's overall a very strong fit, and I believe they would pay at least a second round pick for him with 50% salary retention, especially if you take back dead money like a Michael Kempney in the deal. Of course, trade everyone who isn't nailed down is obvious, and as fun as it would be to find a home for Ryan Dzingel, Alex Galchenyuk, possibly Jay Beagle or Antoine Roussel, I want to take a longer look at the team. After all, they basically already are doing this. It's how they acquired a number of these players in the first place. The important thing to focus on is the future, especially with a rebuilding team. Now, there are two major questions facing a team in the rebuilding stage. The first being, how do I put together a Stanley Cup level core? With all due respect to Clayton Keller, the only piece the Coyotes currently have on their NHL roster that could be a part of a contending core is Jakob Chychrun. He's already 23. Dylan Guenther could be that in the future, but it's not a sure thing as great of a prospect as he is. To borrow a phrase from the late Jason Botchford, you need an army. 3 first-round picks this year, 1 possible lottery pick. It's a great start, and the draft is a pure numbers game. The more picks you have, the better. But is what they have in terms of the top end of the draft enough? A volume approach to the draft is the correct one, since most picks just won't pan out. But there's also no replacement for true high-end talent. Who do the Coyotes have that can bring in another first? Elliot Friedman reported in the December 14th edition of his 32 Thoughts column that the Coyotes actually would be looking at moving Chychrun, and he would land a massive return. But I don't think you'd want to trade him. In terms of guys you'd actually want to trade, probably just Phil Kessel, and even he might not unless a team desperately needs scoring. What team fits that bill? Minnesota? Calgary? Well, ultimately, as I mentioned earlier, the only piece on the Coyotes currently that I would consider part of the future core is Jakob Chychrun. I would try to retain Clayton Keller, Nick Schmaltz, and either Kyle Capobianco or Karel Vejmelka as the present faces of the team as well. Maybe one breaks out unexpectedly and you've got another member of the future core, though that's unlikely even for the youngest of the group, but you need a set of players in the interim to sell hope. Full roster churn, even if for the betterment of the team, creates apathy both among the fans and in the locker room, since guys will start to feel like they're expendable and will get shipped off at the drop of a hat. Only need to look at Oliver Ekman-Larsson to see how mental distress can affect someone's game, not to mention the obvious toxic work environment it would create having everyone be so miserable all the time. One name that might seem like a notable omission though is Barrett Hayton. He's only 21 and a recent top 5 pick, so you'd think he'd be part of the solution in Arizona, but he struggled immensely in the big leagues thus far in his career and was a reach even at the time. He's a pending RFA that likely won't command a lot of money, so now would actually be a pretty good time to sell on him. As much as it sounds like selling low, sometimes player value only continues to depreciate over time if you're too cautious. See Olli Olevi or Julius Honka as recent examples. but it's exactly the features that make him a disappointment that would be enticing to a lot of teams. 5th overall pick in 2018, can play center, decently big at 6'1". 31 NHL GMs are salivating saying, "I can fix him," to their employees in the group chat. And while there's the possibility that it backfires and he becomes a legit player, that's why you've got to set the price high and be ready to hold on to him if you're not getting the offers you want. If I were to offer up a specific target, I would suggest the New York Rangers, a team on the upswing that has the talent to shelter Hayton and let him develop, while also having a young enough core group in Lafreniere and Kakko that he fits in with the age range. It's almost too good of a fit. Now, if we are getting into the trade Chychrun discussion, what is the ask exactly? Who do you target to make that deal? For starters, you have to ask the Moon. This is an elite defenseman that may have struggled to start the season and may not live up to the potentially flash in the COVID-shortened 2021 season, but is still incredibly talented and basically the only major value piece on the NHL roster. The Capitals, as mentioned before with Gostisbehere, could be a good fit, but they don't really have the A prospect you'd ask for as part of a Chychrun package. Connor McMichael is a good player and will be a solid middle to possibly top 6 forward, but he's not an ideal kind of return. If you can get back, say, Connor Zary or Matt Coronado, a first, and maybe a bit extra from the Calgary Flames, that might be a good package. And they have a bit of a hole on the left side D, especially with the departure of Giordano in the offseason. Another possible target is Pittsburgh, whose best left-hand defenseman right now is Brian Dumoulin, though they're in a similar position to the Capitals where they don't really have an A-tier prospect to part with. Finally, Boston might be a good landing spot for Chychrun. Fabian Lysell could be a better fit than either Flames prospect I mentioned, and they have a similar need on the left side, but would they be willing to part with him? If not, it likely isn't worth doing. The good news if you're an Arizona Coyotes fan is that they're doing the right things thus far, accumulating draft picks, taking advantage of their cap space to add assets with negative value deals, and trying to win the tank war. I mentioned earlier, however, that there are 2 major questions that face a rebuilding team, and we've only answered one. The second question, even more important than the first, is how do I surround this core with the pieces necessary to get them to that Stanley Cup level that they're capable of? And I will answer that in the next video when I take a look at a team that's in exactly that situation, coming out of a rebuild, looking to take that next step. Next time, I fix the Los Angeles Kings. Thanks for watching.